Welcome to the podcast Bourbon and Branches and No BS in the beautiful downtown historic Fredericksburg, Virginia. And the captain of this ship is here, Susie.
Good afternoon. So one of the things that I see a lot of on my day-to-day travels, such as they are, is everyone's talking about integrative medicine. It is the new catchphrase in the world. And I wonder if people really know what integrative medicine is. Ta-da! So today we're going to talk a little bit about integrative medicine and talk to one of my very favorite people. We have a guest.
A guest, yay!
We have a guest, and she, to me, is probably the most well-versed to talk to you about integrative medicine, especially in the Fredericksburg community, and hopefully in your community if you're not local. So integrative medicine, so what does that mean? It's a term that everybody hears, you see it everywhere, and I don't think most people really understand what it means. They're looking for an integrative medicine doctor, but they don't know why. The key to integrative medicine is that it is patient-centered medicine. The entire purpose of working in integrative medicine and integrative therapy is to incorporate the entire person. Everything about their life, their lifestyle, body, mind, soul, emotion, so that we can find the most effective treatment to help them get to whatever end of the road they're trying to get to. The emphasis is always on that one-to-one relationship with your therapist. It's very important to maintain that relationship and to have that sort of therapeutic intimacy so that that person can get to know you and help you in the most effective way. And it also means to incorporate a number of different modalities that may be thought of as alternative or complementary by some people into what may be thought of as traditional medical practice. So you may be having chemotherapy and you may be having massage. You may be having psychotherapy and you may be having Reiki. So it's a combination of two things to bring everything together.
So when people want to come ask you personal questions, they can come right here into downtown Fredericksburg, walk in the door, and your smiling face is there to greet them every single time.
Absolutely. That's my job. And to point them in the right direction. And the person that points me in the right direction, and my very, very favorite local resource for everything integrative medicine is Ms. Virginia Schaffer. Jen is the integrative medicine coordinator for Mary Washington Hospital's Cancer Center Integrative Medicine Program. Welcome, Jen. We're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much. It is an honor.
So tell me a little bit about you and how you became involved with the Integrative Medicine Program at Mary Washington Hospital.
You know, it's an interesting story, and I was trying to figure out when I was coming over here for this podcast if where would I begin? Where would that story begin? And it really does begin with meeting you, Susie. So I moved back to the Fredericksburg area in 2014.
Thank goodness.
Having been here in the 90s. And I moved back having been diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was lost, and I really didn't know how to take all this information that was provided to me by my multitude of doctors, you know, medical oncologist, radiation oncologist, breast surgeon. So I had all this information upon being diagnosed. I actually was diagnosed in Boston and had to move back. So it was a very confusing time. I'm a mother of young children. There was a lot, and I was very confused. And I can talk a little bit more about my symptoms as we kind of go on about some specific therapies, but kind of just giving people a sense of who I am. I was sick. I was very sick in 2014. And I remember coming out of my radiation oncologist office and seeing a flyer that an integrative medicine fair was happening over at the hospital. And I said, well, they've got to have some answers for me over there. So I went over there, and sure enough, I see this woman named Susie Wollum, and she just embraced me immediately. And there was some different events happening over the next couple weeks that you just made this kind of shell of my former self start to come out and say, okay, I need to take the bull by the horns, and I need to learn about how to really address some of these symptoms that I'm feeling. So bizarrely, with feeling better, I was like, you know what? I'm going to volunteer at the hospital, like I did when I was a student in the 90s when I was at Mary Washington College. And everybody welcomed me back, and they were so lovely and wonderful. And one day, somebody said, you know what? They want a coordinator for the integrative medicine program at the Regional Cancer Center. You should apply. And that's what I did.
And it certainly changed our world.
And it has been the most phenomenal manna from heaven experience. And I started that in August 2015.
So tell me and tell everybody a little bit about what the integrative medicine program is for those who have never heard of it.
Absolutely. Sure. So in 2011, our core cancer center administration, your oncologists, your surgeons, and individuals that were kind of known as, key stakeholders in the community, your maybe leading nutritionist, massage therapist, they kind of put the call out and said, let's do a town hall. How can we make this holistic program happen at a nonprofit community healthcare system?
And the fact that they were even interested in bringing in these holistic therapists at all.
We are very unique. When our manager and our medical directors go to commissions and conferences for community health centers, we're very unique that we're able to do this. And that was the start of it. They needed to discuss, let's talk about it. Let's get education and awareness about the benefit of these therapies. Let's get the NIH and CDC research to really understand and start there.
And the fact that we have this research that shows that these therapies are beneficial to people in conjunction with what would be deemed traditional treatment.
Exactly. And so from the patient perspective, I was able to kind of come in and talk to the very oncologist that I had just, I'm your patient. So I'm like, hey, acupuncture, used it. Massage therapy, used it. I was the face that I could come into these meetings and say, I know that you guys met about this for the last couple of years. You really do want to shape it up. And let me kind of tell you, you're doing great. And this is what we can move the program forward. So right before I started it really was the main thing they had focused on is we absolutely want to do this, but we need to make sure that patients know that we have vetted the people in the community for us to refer individuals to, as well as if we're going to bring an individual, a practitioner, a therapist on our medical campus, that they know that we have partnered with them in good faith through our hospital credentialing vetting process. So that was the big part of the work from about 2011 to 2013 was kind of creating this first initial group of about 25, you being an inaugural member.
I in fact was.
The Reiki practitioners, the yoga therapist, massage therapist, some other specialized things like integrative dentistry, kind of thinking about things like that. And so they kind of had a place, right? They had this kind of committee, this network, and then that helped that education awareness. So when I came on board, they had, say, like a yoga group at Stafford and a couple of massage hours in Fredericksburg, and it was just, just getting the community kind of used to the idea, the patients and the doctors used to the idea. But of course, when you start putting things on the web and you start having flyers, everybody in the community wants to start asking you about it. So you start knowing that you have a network of information that even if a person doesn't have cancer, they want to know. Like a classic example would be that father who calls you about their autistic child. Please refer me to a music therapist. I got you, sir. Let me talk to you about it.
And I think as a practitioner, and I certainly am very honored to be a practitioner in the integrative medicine program. It's so important to me. And working in conjunction with someone's oncologist or their
surgeon, specialist.
You get calls from everybody.
The
and
whole
it's
gamut.
It's such a wonderful thing. But I think that it's most important for that patient, which then becomes our client, of course, to know that the person that you're seeing is actually a licensed professional, that you have investigated that you have done a background investigation, that you know that they actually have training in what it is that they're doing instead of just somebody who maybe hasn't had a formal training and has decided to set up shop somewhere. So I think that's important.
Yeah. No, it's a big part. The application process, it's kind of what you would expect it to be. I, at this point, with a network of roughly 45 people, and when I came on board, it got to the point that it was really about inviting an application. I wouldn't just accept any old application because it's about doing those site visits, doing those interviews, doing the background check, and then also incorporating the piece of where is your training and are you really kind of, I like to often call it the get it factor. Like after talking with them and having that conversation with them, are they really coming to understand our oncology patient?
Right.
So, and if it isn't something that they quite are ready for, I say, hey, call me in a few months, call me in a year, and that's okay. Sometimes it's not a fit for everybody. A classic example would be that we have providers that are sometimes in Fredericksburg half their time and maybe in Baltimore or maybe in Richmond, and that's fine. I like the honesty of like, I just don't think I could commit to that, and that's fine. So the classic kind of application piece that you would expect, and so that we can help patients know what to look for if they call us about maybe a different therapy. We kind of say, okay, so remember what our vetting process is, and we kind of go through that with them.
One of the things that I really like about it is that if John calls you, you don't have to be, as you mentioned, you don't have to be in the program, but if John calls you and says, hey, I live in downtown Fredericksburg, and I'm looking for a massage therapist, you can give him a list of these are the ones that we have fully vetted, that and you can even narrow it down if he's looking for someone who does deep tissue or someone who's specialized in oncology. And as you said, right now we have over 40 different practitioners. And what are some of the different modalities that are offered through the program?
I mean, the ones that we focus on the most because of that research in particular with cancer is definitely going to be your acupuncture, Reiki, massage therapy, yoga therapy, healing touch, and some other kind of Eden energy medicine. Then you could say that when we are able to find individuals, it's not exactly easy, but we really try to focus on maybe the Tai Chi, mindful-based stress reduction, ionic desensitization kind of stuff. So we also recently added our aesthetics because we have that portion of our wig rooms and our scarf rooms. So we wanted to kind of make that come together. And we have all of our knitted knockers everywhere that you...
Knitted knockers. We will talk about them on another episode when I beg people to help this organization.
So there's, that's you alluded to it in the beginning when you were defining integrative medicine. Integrative medicine I use, of course, because that's part of our definitions when we talk about alternative, complementary, integrative. But I also like to use integrative therapies. And the one reason I do that is because art therapy is integrative therapy.
Absolutely.
Knitting, when you discuss knitted knockers, knitting is therapy. So, we have our patients that, they just may never want to do massage therapy. So I just really try to, in my consults with them, find a spot that is going to help them, feel better. So, the music therapy, art therapy, but also, too, making sure that it makes sense for that therapy to be part of the network. And that's a big part of my job, right? Is really researching it, vetting it, and such and such.
One of the fun things that I've had with the knitted knockers is people that women who have just come through breast cancer. They've just finished up and they hear about it and they come in here. Of course, they can pick up their knockers here or at the hospital. And they'll come in here and they don't necessarily want to pick up a set of knitted knockers, but what they want to do is volunteer because somebody gave them one and now they want to give back. And to them, it's their therapy to learn to knit. And as you know, in coming in the shop, we've had women who've popped in here before who've never knit a thing in their life, and we just sit them down and let me show you how to do this. And we send them on their way. It's such a wonderful, it's just a wonderful way to reach out to the community. So if I were in treatment at the hospital, I would know why I would want to use these people.
Sure.
Now, are some of the therapists at the hospital? Do I have to go other places? And do they take my insurance?
So that's an excellent question. So when I started, we were kind of focusing on a couple of on-site services at Fredericksburg, and then I've expanded it to our Stafford and Montrose locations. everything that we do as the Regional Cancer Center Administration Group, in that support services realm, support groups, integrative medicine, some of the patient services, that is there because of the wonderful community that we have of the Fredericksburg Planning District 16,
we do.
Because of Mary Washington Healthcare Foundation. That's the beauty of it. And so I'm the one that's, piloting these programs, seeing if the patients really want them and will show us and tell us about the benefits, and then I, submit the grants to have those therapists come for 2-3 hours.
Right.
We're talking, they're taking that time away from their, practices out in the community. But no, it's there's no insurance involved because it's a support service as part of our center.
And
that
this
we are
is for the services in the hospital, which include massage, Reiki,
we have massage,
yoga.
Reiki, pet. Well, I'm going to talk about pet therapy in a second. So massage, Reiki, yoga therapy. We sometimes are able to bring in our spiritual life coaching for specialized appointments, some workshops.
And these are appointments that are available at the hospital at no cost to the patient.
You got it.
So what if I'm not in treatment and I just want a massage therapist or a reflexologist or...
Right.
So
we'll just make sure that we delineate the two groups. So, anybody that is considered a cancer patient, right? They're currently in treatment, recently out of treatment, or a survivor, and they're living in Planning District 16, we're going to serve them. If it's an individual that does not have cancer, doesn't have a history of cancer, then that's where we go to kind of
they
what
just
you're
want
talking.
an excellent therapist.
Yeah, that's what they're talking about. Then that's exactly right. I become the resource-driven person, and I say, so let me talk to you about who we have as part of our provider directory, and I connect them. And this is, of course, where I have the conversation with them. Please let them know that I referred you. Please know that some of these therapists have the ability to take insurance. Some don't.
Right.
Some have sliding scale, because they want to financially help you out. Kind of like the YMCA model, right?
Absolutely.
So that's like a thing that I talk about a lot. I said, I don't want you to not contact this therapist because you're afraid of the cost.
Right.
Let's have,
and that's what's so important.
Let's have the conversation
right.
first.
Absolutely.
I said, please let that therapist get to know you because you don't know. There could be one small thing that they could discuss with you, and also so much self-care. So many things that people can do at home. So that's usually the kind of conversation I would have if somebody from the community that might heard of, went on the web or knew somebody who was a cancer patient and wanted information.
And of course, we have every year a wonderful health fair.
Right.
Where the entire community, whether they're in treatment or not, can come out and meet the therapists that are a part of the integrative medicine program and learn a little bit about what they do in a very non-threatening,
and that's
non-committal environment.
Right. And that's really that third part, right? Is that, that first part, me being really active in the community and understanding who's out there that we can have part of our network. And then the second part, coordinating the actual therapies at the hospital, counseling patients, working with our nurses. And the third being, we're about access. We're a nonprofit community healthcare system, and we need to make sure that we provide our community as much resources and information for the prevention of diseases and the continuing of good health. So when we partner with the YMCA,
right,
every first Friday of November is what we try to do. That's exactly the point of that, is to provide all these wonderful people that we work with in the community. The stage is now theirs, right? That they do the yoga demonstrations and the nutrition demonstrations, and it's great. And we owe them that, right? It's like, let's give you the stage now and really talk about what you've done. And it's a great way to end the year too, because usually we do that, and then everybody kind of scatters into their holiday
has to be done
world.
But I think it's nice for our community to have that, and I like that we do it at the Y because, again, it's a very non-threatening environment. It's not like going to the hospital where it's, I don't care who you are, it invokes a fear in every human being.
Yeah.
And they can wander around and they can meet some of these therapists who maybe are offering things that they didn't know about. For instance, even 5 years ago for me, I would have patients from the hospital that were coming in because of the integrative medicine program looking for reflexology. And their doctors would say, well, it might work, it might not, but, once they came a few times and their doctor saw that their numbers were staying good and they were feeling good, then they were sending more people. And now it's kind of more of a common household word. But that first meeting is always a conversation of what are you looking for? How can I help you get to where you need to be? And I think that's a big part of the program too.
You just kind of alluded to kind of like the numbers game, the volume, right? You just kind of, that one little example, the reason we don't have the integrative medicine fair at the hospital when you met me in 2014 is because we're too big. We got too big.
We are too big.
There's no place that makes sense anymore. And it's also, to be honest, we're also trying to be respectful of patient confidentiality. No, patients come to the hospital for for a reason. And the spaces that you can have that, the access area, it no longer made sense. But the reality is we got too big. We have too many people, places, and
over
therapies.
40 practitioners now.
And also to people I would consider community partners, you know. When you have the Y, they have wonderful community partners the same as we do. Fredericksburg Food Bank is an excellent example of that. So you want to cultivate that. Then to that, what ends up happening, we get more of that kind of understanding and awareness that then the patients call. And so last year we had like 1,125 integrative medicine consults, appointments, group things. I mean, that's
amazing.
Great.
Just in our community.
Right.
And that's the thing is we're just
community.
Talking about the Fredericksburg area. And we do have them in surrounding areas, but that's a separate, it's the same, but slightly different.
Right. And we're always encouraging patients to check out whatever it is that you can see. So I, as a patient, I have used the things here in Fredericksburg, but I've also attended a writing session at the Smith Center for Healing Arts in DC because that's where I grew up.
Right.
So I could go up, have dinner with my mom, go to this writing, so I tell those stories to people and say, hey, you can do one thing one time. You don't have to feel like, oh, I could never do that. No,
I can't commit myself to
twice
a week for a month.
You don't have to. If you see something, and that's really when I'm encouraging them to think outside of the box. Mm-hmm. Music therapy our music therapists are awesome. It goes beyond just listening to music, right? Music therapists, it's about instrumentation, writing music, things like that. But if it's not going to work, I start to talk about, I'm like, okay, well, tell me what music, how do you access music?
Right.
And let's really think about that. So that's an example of, again, what people can do at home, the free things that they can access. I tell my patients all the time, first Friday of the month, just walk down Caroline and look at art and you'll feel better.
Right. And it's important to
it's
have
these kind
that
of things.
individualized approach. And I think that's a big thing with integrative medicine is keeping it as an individualized approach. It's not a cookie cutter medicine. It's not cookie cutter therapy. It's not everybody gets the same massage. Everything with every therapist I have ever met in our program makes everything personalized to that person. It's being in the moment with that person. And we really walk that walk with them as they're going through treatment, and then after treatment, it becomes a relationship, it becomes a bond. And I think that's, again, part of the community, and that's why this is so important, that people know that we have it, because it is our community. These therapists are in our community. These doctors are in your community. These doctors know these therapists, and they're telling you to go to them. I mean, it's such a team effort that's so important for us.
One of the things that we do a lot as a team, and it's something that is so remarkably similar to my career, was higher education administration. And I worked with thousands of students. I always tease that I had 2 biological students and some 20,000 adopted children. Advocacy, building self-advocacy.
Absolutely.
And that's a huge, it's a huge hurdle.
Yes.
If, coming from my counseling roots and knowing what we bear as human beings in our childhood and our young adulthood and our adulthood, that then when you are told that you have cancer or another chronic illness, our Crohn's disease is a good example. I'll get calls, people just trying to live with a chronic illness, diabetes, somebody has a heart condition, helping them advocate for themselves.
Right, to regain their power.
Is an example. And that was one of the things that I kind of knew in the shadows, but it wasn't really until I think I fully when I met you and I really understood that that's the piece, is that you're the integrator.
Okay.
And then you meet...
I see that.
You know what I mean? And then you meet the people that help you bring it all together.
Right.
In other words, if you don't make that first step, if you don't raise your hand,
and
if you don't make
really
the call...
it is about that. But so many people are afraid to.
Yeah.
And they don't know. And that's the great thing about this program is that, and the website is wonderful, and the flyers that you do are wonderful, and our health fairs. Yeah. But just the ability to, when somebody when they come in here into the shop and they ask me about something, well, if it's not a therapy that I provide, I can pull that up and say, here, let me show you people that are closer to you. Or, maybe they live 20 miles from here. And coming into Fredericksburg is tough.
I do like that. I feel like one of the things we've built is that you talking to, you all have created then this wonderful network amongst each other. That you refer within each other.
You have to.
Right.
You have to.
So and that's great. So when I hear that from patients, I'm all like, wonderful. That means that this is working on a lot of levels. And of course, the most joyful thing is sitting there at the cancer center and watching a patient say to another patient, have you gone to, have you attended, have you used? Nothing is greater than seeing a patient support another patient.
Absolutely.
And really that's when I sit there after they've left and I turn around and I kind of start crying, because that's how I know
we're doing a
good job.
Amen.
So
now, if somebody wanted to avail themselves of the integrative medicine program at Mary Washington Hospital, how can they find out more about that?
The best thing to do is to call me, because I have a password protected voice message line. Because what we have to do is we have to make sure that if it's a cancer patient, that we're kind of part of that nurse navigation.
And how do they call you?
And so how they call me is 540-741-0642. If they happen to be a member of the community and they're just wanting, some information, same applies. They're just going to leave their name and number, and I will certainly call them back. I'm also responsive to email, and it's a simple email. It's my name. It's Virginia.Schaffer, SCHAFFER, at mwhc.com.
And we will have that information available for people. And they can also always stop by here. We have an entire box of Jen's cards that we're happy to hand out. And
I have an entire box of your cards.
We do that really well, don't we? And we can certainly lead you toward the website and the information if they have trouble navigating that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Jen. I loved having you here. And
a pleasure and an honor always.
Always. And look for integrative medicine programs in your community if you are not in Fredericksburg. And if you are, please stop in and see Jen Schaffer. She literally will change your life.
Wow, Jen Schaffer was a fantastic guest.
She's amazing. Jen is a wonderful resource in our community. I'm so lucky to be able to call her friend.
One of the ways that you can actually help grow the access and the awareness to integrative medicine is to share this podcast with other people.
We will be sharing this podcast with other people, and it will be available on
iTunes, all kinds of great places, wherever your favorite podcast drops. You can find it there. Make sure you subscribe for free and share it with your friends and give it a rating. You can do all of those things. It's fantastic. And of course, another fantastic local resource is to stop here locally if you are in the area, and you can do that. Tell everyone where we're located.
Always shop local. It's important wherever your community is. Always shop with the mom and pop stores, the ones that are paying for ballet lessons, the ones that are making car payments. It's important to support your community. But this community has the center of town, and we are at 907 Charles Street in downtown Fredericksburg. We have been here since 2013. And while we're talking about local, since we're supporting all things local, our bourbon today. My bourbon pick for today, since we're talking local, is from Bowman Brothers, because of course the the Bowman Distillery is right here, just outside of downtown Fredericksburg. And I picked Bowman Brothers because it is a blended, triple distilled bourbon, one of my all-time favorites. Definitely rates in my top 10 under $50. And it's one of my go-tos. And so we're sharing that today, and we're giving a shout out to Bowman's because we love them and we love that we're part of their community, and we love the Mary Washington Integrative Health Program. We're glad they are a part of our community, and we hope that you will come back and see us again and become a part of our community too.
So put that in your glass. You've been listening to the podcast Bourbon, Branches, and No BS, brought to you by the Center of Town. Stop